All right. Samurai Bird. Right out of the gate. Hello, hello. See if I can actually pay attention to chat. This is not my best angle, but I'm figuring it out. Well, the previous round of rambles was more popular than I expected, and so I was asked to do it again, and here I am doing it again. I figured if nothing else, which hopefully folks can hear, I thought I'd maybe go through. Eric Hussein had the 10 questions for Katana people, so I can ramble through that. I was thinking about making a video for it anyway, but I thought well, maybe I'll just go live and see what happens. Hey, Carl. Howdy, sword friends. Hi, Sam. You can hear me. Thank you for the confirmation. I am glad. Joe gave some advice on different software to use, and I was not particularly keen on. There's just too much software to learn already, so I didn't really want to futz with it. The built-in utility with YouTube kind of makes it easy to just jump in and see what happens. So I figured I'd give that a shot. Carl, I've heard that you've had a little case of the muck. I hope you're feeling well. That's not number one. The list of 10 questions that Eric Hussein put out is: do you have any formal training? What is your current favorite katana and why? Which is the most expensive katana in your collection? How often do you practice? Do you sharpen your own blades? Do you prefer differentially or through hardened swords? What's your ideal skull length? What's your favorite blade geometry style and why? Do you name your swords? And what is the best cut you've ever made or are most proud of? So I thought maybe I'd give a shot to that. But the most expensive one is part of that. And I can answer. Yeah, I can answer that. So the first one, because number one, I will get to your part of the question. Do you have any formal training? As a few of you know, I do study a few different styles of Japanese style swordsmanship. I study Tenshin, Shoden, Katori, Shinto, Ryu, Sugawara Ha. So that's the long form version of the first type of Japanese swordsmanship that I studied. And that it's Katori is the short nomenclature for it, and Sugawara is the kind of the head instructor of that style. It's a branch off from the traditional Katori, but anyway, that's the one. It hasn't been particularly active as of late. The COVID situation and the like has put a downer on training. The other one I study, and frankly should be getting ready for now, but instead I'm streaming, is Toyama Ryu, and that is a newer style of, well, not particularly new, as like a World War II type of style or time frame where it came about. And they both focus on very different things, but I do attempt to study both of them. Back to 100. I'm glad to hear it, Carl. And my camera's here, but my chat is here, so I'm sorry. You get the pretty side, and then you get the chin side. Looking back at the questions, Mr. J, how many guns do you own? Any guns? Yes, I do. I own several of them. I don't generally tend to talk about them on YouTube. I'm certainly not an authority matter on it. A long time ago, I did make a firearm video related to picking a carry weapon, and that was, I suppose, more related to what I would give you advice on swords-wise, in which I went to a range and I rented a bunch of pistols and I shot them to figure out which one I was most comfortable with. And fortunately, you can do that with gun ranges. You can go and, invest some tuition in figuring out which one suits you. And I was really, really glad that I did that rather than buying what I thought I would like. I spent some money, rented a bunch of guns, and then figured out what I did like, which ended up being the MP Shield is what I usually daily carry. Can I buy one of your Skydro katanas? Jack, I sold the majority of them. I don't think I have any Skydro katana left around, but supposedly they will send me a review sample, which I am not to break, and then that one will maybe be for sale. Questions. This kind of gun, he would instantly wonder if the steel would make it good. I don't know if they would make the same things. Guns, I imagine, have to be a lot more kind to heat, the dissipation of heat in a sword. You might lose your temper with as hot as some of the barrels get. Panotic. Do I have any experience with Nihonto? Yeah. Recommended some Nihonto US is run by Andy Quirt. He's been a great mentor and knows a lot of stuff. Rice Cracker, AOI Art Japan, those are all places that seem to be pretty reliable in terms of their description and what you get out the other end. So if you're looking for deals on Nihonto, then those are the places I tend to look. AOI has some auctions, and it can be a little bit to figure out, but they have some really beautiful pieces that come up, and I've known a few people that have gotten some really good deals on very nice wakizashis, which seem to be the redheaded stepchild of the Nihonto community. Nobody likes them. People like Tanto and Katana or other special blades, but if you're interested in studying Nihonto or getting a piece that's worthy of some appreciation, then wakizashis tend to be the best value. Otherwise, buying Nihonto on eBay and Craigslist and some of the other places, Nihonto message board might not be bad, but there's always a risk that you're going to get an old tired blade, and that means that the core steel is showing, and it's very easy to overspend and make some mistakes there. I've done it a number of times. I don't generally talk about Nihonto very much because I don't feel like I don't know. It's very easy for me to perpetuate misinformation there. So sometimes I show it, but it's a very mature hobby, and I am still learning there. Vlad, I'm trying to go through the 10 questions. Maybe I should have posted those in the description. But what's my favorite katana is theoretically going to come up. You don't think he was... I don't think. Well, there's a lot of swords. Jack. Sometimes I forget that I have them, but I'm pretty sure I sold all the Skydros that I have. The last ones that I had remaining were the Kumo and the this odd not model number type one. Carl, which $1,500 Hirozakuri is it? The Skydro one? Marco, I don't honestly listen to a lot of music, which is funny because I invest a lot in speakers and sound equipment and headphones and things, but then I don't end up listening to music. So I don't know that I I listen to a lot of different kinds of music though. So I'm not an aficionado when it comes to music. I used to be about speakers and audio stuff, but not because I like the music, but for some reason I like the electronics behind it. But yeah, I listen to just about anything if it's recorded well, but bad recordings or crappy playback tend to drive me off the wall. Forgive me if the chat is more. I was streaming on Twitch last hour, and only I had one message. This chat moves a lot faster. Have I heard of any blades made of depleted uranium? I have not. Do you sell some of your swords? One, do you sell, and where? I put them on eBay, and a link to what I have for sale is I have an ongoing list on SBG under my name. It's not too hard to find, and then I put a link to my eBay store in most of the videos towards the bottom. No, I don't. I don't have the crossed feather one. All of the Skydro ones that I have sold. I know there's some in bags and stuff up there, but they're not. None of them are Skydro. I'm glad that you're interested though. The Skydro pieces are. I've heard that they are running behind. I did get a call from Danny not too long ago at Skydro because we had talked like months ago about sending a review sample, and I pinged him and said, "Are you still going to do that?" And they're trying to fill customer orders. Oddly, last year I was talking to Jackie at Huawei about sending a review sample, and they said wait till after Chinese New Year. And now another Chinese New Year is upon us, and I don't have any review sample. But there's a lot of people waiting for their products, so I'm kind of glad that they're not sending something to me when they're having trouble filling the orders that they have open. I'll move on to question number 2. Eric, he's saying, I'm glad you joined, Eric, because I'm going through your 10 questions. It's been the it's been a good topic to go through, if nothing else, to ramble. What is my current favorite katana in my collection and why? It's my Hanwei bamboo mat. It's gonna remain, and it's no longer really a Hanwei bamboo mat. That's the blade. I had it remounted and put together with Hyper Cafe fittings. It's been in a few different videos, and something about it is just something I've liked. And now I've rambled about it being my favorite so much, or just in my mind, I think it's stuck, and that's probably why. It's nothing particularly special. A lot of people that hold it don't find any particular fascination with it or really understand my interest in it. It just early on in collecting, I found one. I really liked the way it felt. I spent a bunch of money I bought myself a birthday present, which is a pretty rare thing for me, and had it remounted and zazzed up with Mitsudomes. And now I think it's got to go on the ground with me. So that's the second one, Eric. Like and subscribe, y'all. Yeah, like and subscribe away. Yeah, Jack, if you're not having any luck, you can ping them directly on their website, maybe. I don't think they respond too much to Facebook or anything else. And in fairness, I remember I requested a review sample, and when Danny pinged me a few months ago to talk about it, he responded to an email that I had sent him like 3 or 4 years earlier when I requested a review sample. So I thought that was funny. Like, yeah, we heard you. We're getting through our backlog of emails. So my advice in terms of buying Skydro would be buy what's in stock. If someplace has it and they say they can ship it to you immediately, then good deal. Daniel, hello from Enzo. The workshop, the stand from Enzo Workshop is still behind me. Hopefully you guys have seen it in a few other videos. Have you ever done deals with Ryan Swords or associates? I'm curious if they rep you. I have done 2 reviews on Ryan Swords, and I saw Samurai Bird's video a hot minute ago about the Naga, what is it? The Nodat Naginata, there we go, taking some damage cutting bamboo on a through hardened blade, and he did not have the best response. But the experience I've had, which may be biased having been a YouTube review guy, has been positive. The 2 that they sent me were pretty nice, and I requested one from them recently, the Demon Slayer sword. It's a chance to do maybe a fun video with another creator. So I made a request to them to send me another sample. But to me, they've sent pretty nice swords, and they've been pretty prompt. But I understand that your mileage may vary there. Generally speaking, though, they seem to be pretty competitive, and the swords, provided you're capable of what's the best way to say it? It always makes me nervous when they said they sent laminated blades and didn't. I don't know that people have complained a whole lot about their swords being bad. It sounds like Samurai Bird has had some issues with his Naginata, but generally speaking, it seems like the quality is pretty decent and the prices are pretty decent. But it's just they falter a little bit on service, and it seems like there's some things lost in translation. Hopefully that answers your question. Yes, I don't do the drunk reviews as often. It's kind of murder on the throat, and I've lost my edge. Working in a corporate job and not yelling and saying mean things to people, I've kind of lost my 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 ability to be humorous in the drunken rambly way that I used to be. It doesn't come as naturally as it once did. I don't have any swords made from exotic metals. No, I mean, I have swords made from exotic metals in the sense that they're folded or like homemade steels and things like that, but not anything made from titanium. Uh, the closest that I've had are things made from like S7 or something like that, which isn't particularly exotic. Scripture, if you want to see a cold steel, this is kind of a misconception about breaking swords that does for some reason gets lost a little bit. I don't actually break swords that I pay money for because I give the impression with all of that nonsense behind me that I am a richer man than I am. Many of you would not expect me to drive a 15-year-old Subaru, but that is the case. So the basic gist is I don't break it if I spent money on it, at least not intentionally. Sometimes I use them and they fail doing normal stuff, and then I share that. But I don't otherwise break swords. So that's why I don't break Albions and I don't break really expensive stuff. So if somebody sends me a cold steel uh, sword and then tells me to break it, or if Cold Steel sends me one, then I will happily do so. But at the moment, the one I have, I don't want to break. Well, I kind of want to break it, but I'm not gonna because I don't want to that much. Yeah, Samurai Bird, I'm getting back on the chat here. That's disappointing. It's disappointing to see that well, hopefully, I can understand from a business perspective that a lot of people go whack a tree. Bamboo isn't necessarily a forgiving target, but in what little I saw that you did with it, it doesn't seem like it should have had the type of damage that it did. And I can't tell if it's chipping or rolling, but it does seem like the blade was either too soft or too hard, regardless. And you might be able to sharpen it up and clean it up, but anyway, I can't fault him from saying that looks like you did something worse with it, but that's them having faith in the heat treatment. And since you have video to go along with it, I would expect not just from a YouTube perspective, but anyone that could substantiate, hey, look, it was fine. Look what I did. This should have been able to cut. should not have been broken doing these things. Would yield a better response from them. So hopefully hopefully they have nice things to say to you when you're done. You say katana is used for folding steel for other aesthetics, but doesn't look like. Jack, as far as I'm aware, I don't think that folding steel inherently makes it better. I mean, obviously, it can, or it can kind of peanut butter spread out some of the failure points and make the whole thing stronger. But all things being equal, if you have a really really nice, well-made steel, then there's not an inherent benefit to folding it, as far as I understand. There theoretically could be some benefits in laminating it, but generally speaking, in somebody theoretically being able to do the absolute best possible thing with the steel, there are some nuances to maybe argue about what makes things better or worse, but that just isn't reality of modern heat treatments and what's on the market today. Folding tends to add weaknesses, and I haven't found it to make stronger blades at all. It certainly makes them prettier, or makes them have a historical connection that they otherwise wouldn't, but I haven't found them stronger. And I frankly haven't found laminated blades to be anything particularly special either, though that's in some very limited experience. So, I mean, some of the toughest swords that I've tested have been like either a 1060 steel or an S7 or something like that, a modern steel that's held up well. Oddly enough, softer stuff tends to hold up much better as well. You'd think that it would break, but the last review that I did from Romance of Men, it was a softer blade. It deformed a little easier. I'd venture, I guess, it wouldn't hold an edge as well as some differentially hardened or harder counterparts, but it certainly survived a lot more abuse. And I have sneaking suspicion that a lot of that is because they're a bit on the softer side too. So how you define excellence and what you're really looking for is a challenge. Fatosa, I think I've showed the grain structure on the both the Jakku sword and the Ryan sword that were laminated and folded. And so hopefully any folded blades that are broken, both of those are laminated and had a folded layer, at least one of them. So hopefully you can see it. Or that was Cody, sorry. All right, I'm getting behind. All right. The Anathar blades. Somebody did send me, a fellow sword friend Matt sent me a ultraviolet, a big stainless steel honking chop centric thing that's somewhere buried behind there. At the moment, though, I don't have any more swords of power, so to speak. So the shards of Anathar are all that remained. All right. So if I missed your question, I'm sorry. You can post it again, and hopefully I'll catch up. I'll move on to question 3 from Eric, though, to draw my eyes away for a moment here. Which is the most expensive katana in your collection? And if you're comfortable, how much was she? I don't know that I'm comfortable, actually, because my wife might see this. The most expensive, I think the most expensive that at least I have at the moment, because I've sold off some of the stuff that I had that I think was nicer, but it's probably the Anthony DiCristofano katana that I have. And that's not a name that you hear particularly often, but if you see any of his older stuff, he was or I don't know if he's still forging. He is an incredibly talented smith, and it's kind of the closest thing I've seen out of North American smiths to the Japanese aesthetic and stuff. It's very, very nice. So I have a katana from Anthony DiCristofano. The polish on it, I don't think shows shows off as much as it could, and I've teetered on the idea of having it polished again, and it's done up in some pretty old fittings as well. So I made a video on it. You can see it. I think that's currently the schmanciest one in my collection, or if I were to need to sell off things very quickly, that would probably be the one that would garner the most interest. Any recommendations on entry-level katana? Watch 300 videos that I made. I will say that if you have, I should probably make a big list of answer all these questions, and then the community can give you new information. The Samurai Bird, I was just reading your note there. That's good. I hope it comes out well for you. Sorry, brain fart there. Recommendations for entry-level katana. I can't answer that question without an enormous amount more context. And frankly, I've become like that question when I get it. You can see like it stops my brain. There's like a pause that happens. Are you going to train? What are you going to cut? What are you going to use it for? How tall are you? What's your budget? What do you want to do with it? There's a laundry list of things that come up when people ask for katana advice, and so it's painful almost when people say, "Hey, what's the best thing for a beginner? What's the best thing for $500? What's the?" I need to move on from those questions because I'm pretty sure my brain overheats every time it comes up. Best advice for having katanas in Cancun, Mexico: humidity, oil frequently, and keep them in some sort of shear saya. Hopefully it keeps the humidity in the air off of them. So you're probably going to have better luck with that. You can also take like a saran wrap, oil the sword, and then wrap it in in kind of a loose foam, and it'll keep the oil on it and hopefully keep some of the moisture out. Sometimes you can get that on the swords. They'll ship that way, but heavy coats of oil, and then sometimes wrapping them in that saran wrap can do that. And then you just have to be be cautious. You have to almost keep an oil rag with you as well, because I found in particularly humid climates, if you're even doing kata or something, you can swing the sword around for 10 minutes and then rest will start forming on the blade. So I'd also be cautious about that. If you're swinging around anything fancy, try to be in a temperature controlled environment if you're taking anything out that's old or expensive, because they can rust real quick outside. Hopefully that helped, Carlos. Jack Cook, I will tell you that I will never do a giveaway. At least that's not my intent. Giveaways are a challenging thing, and it's more drama. Even if I find a sword, if a vendor reached out to me and said, I will give you 10 swords to give away to your subscribers, I would turn them down. And that's not because I wouldn't like to give swords away, but it's more doing giveaways can be an easy thing, but validating who gets them, the drawings and the this and that, the YouTube rules around it, the sporadic lawsuits that tend to happen to people that do giveaways is just a bag of worms that I'm 1,000% not interested in doing. So I will give you a heads up about that if you're interested in giveaways, it's not going to happen with me. I've thought about it in the past because vendors have not necessarily offered, but I've seen other folks have kind of tchotchkes or something. But I making the videos and filming them and doing this is about as much a tax on my time as I can do. Figuring out how to do a giveaway, avoid any potential issues, because there's been people that have gotten sued for doing giveaways, and I know that some of that is people trying to game the system and gain subscribers and do some other stuff. Other folks do it all the time and have no problem. I don't know. I have too much to lose, and frankly, I don't want to go to the post office any more than I have to. So anyway, not that you were specifically asking for it, but I just thought I'd clarify, because I do get that question actually quite a bit as well around giveaways, that it's just even shipping them is more of a pain in the ass than I'd like to deal with. I ship swords often enough, but like it's always bleh. And it makes me nervous when they're in the mail too. Set a sword in the gun case, Manwich. No, that's from Angus Trim. So the sword there, that's the Angus Trim one. He sent me one to do a review on. I think it's up for members already. I just haven't released it because YouTube, I don't know, if I put too many out, I try to do them in batches, but basically I've done some base review on it. It's fantastic. It's a great sword, but he ships them in those gun cases. So it's sitting over there for when I send it back to him. All right. Well, I'm going to forgive me again if I've missed your question. I'll move on to Mr. Hussein's next question 4, which is, how often do you practice? Not often enough is the answer to that one. I should be. Class is about to start and I'm not there. So not as often as I should. The cold weather and where I happen to live is not particularly fun. I'll go out in the snow or something. Usually it doesn't deter me too much, but it's been some days of bitter cold, and so I don't do that. There aren't many days where I don't go handling a sword, but formal practice, whether it be cutting or kata, whatever it happens to be, I would say I'm still pretty good about doing it at least once a week. I try to fit it in 2, 3, 4 times a week, but I have not been very good at that. And there are totally weeks where I don't practice formally doing anything. Cutting is another one. It's not particularly hard to set things up. I just don't. So usually if I cut, it's kind of an odd thing where sword practice doing kata is meditative almost. I find it useful if I need to break away from work for a minute. But cutting is almost like I should grab a camera if I'm going to cut something, because one, the samurai bird situation, right? You got that nagi, it breaks, something weird happens, and now it's not on film. Well, I feel like that's kind of my shtick. So anytime I whack it into stuff, I try to break out a camera, and so that practice as a subsequent result does not happen as often. All right, I've missed again. Camera over here, text over here, and it's small. I brought my monitor like closer to my face and everything too, and it's still too hard to read. What about maybe a zombie go boom head? Those things are like $200, Weapon Man. I'd happily break one, and I've thought about useful ways to make them, but ballistics gel and keeping it and not getting it all full of like sticks and gunk and dealing with it seems to be more than I want to do. But that's been the more interesting part. A zombie head would be fun to whack, but they're expensive. Do you find katana handles break on the part where the tang ends? Not often. I would say not often. If there's space in them, then I figure as I'm impacting something, that's the part that's like rattling and smacking around in the sky. If it's not secured properly, or if it has space to wiggle, that there's a point of impact that can happen there. But I want to say that there was a Ronin katana many years ago where the handle started to break apart, and I stopped testing it. In retrospect, now I think I would have made it through, and the handle would have survived. I don't know if I would have stopped the same way, but it's rare. It's a rare thing for the ska to kind of blow apart on me. Came with the receipt from Ryan Sword for $100. Kenny, that is weird. That is weird. Ryan Sword, at least as I understand it, and I don't mean to speak for Swords of Northshire, but as I understand it, they don't manufacture things. They work with manufacturers, and they are a distributor that kind of brands the products that they make. So Ryan Sword, as they've stated, is one of the companies they work with. So it's possible if you order from Swords of Northshire, you might get a Ryan Sword. And in the sword world, it doesn't. I imagine there are just less checks and balances around you seeing kind of behind the curtain. But it's the same thing with a lot of different stuff. If you buy a Samsung thing, it's possible that it's manufactured by, well, somebody else, or like an appliance or something. There's a lot of appliance you think you might buy one of these, but it could be manufactured by some other subsidiary or something like that, or some other company that was contracted to make the goods for you, even though it's got a different brand on it. I think like Hanwei, Huawei, they tend to manufacture their own stuff, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know all of the ones that manufacture their own stuff. Ronin Katana does. I think they're working with a particular forge that does anyway. Anyway, yeah, but it sounds like Swords of Northshire may work with other brands or manufacturers or people that can manage their projects or their orders. So I'm not. It's not surprising that it came from Ryan Sword, but it is surprising that you get to peer behind the curtain and see the manufacturing cost of it. Though I imagine, again, that's probably not the price you would pay for Ryan Swords, because I found that Ryan Sword and Swords of Northshire are not terribly far off in terms of the advertised price to customers. But if you're ordering hundreds or potentially thousands of swords from them, there's probably a pretty deep discount. ASD, I don't. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, chat moving. Alientude. Hey, Chris. More meat is needed. I actually don't have any alcohol for a bit. I'm drinking root beer at the moment. I'm completely out of alcoholic beverages to consume, and I don't want to go to the store. So root beer it is. Well, I have some port, but I don't have any I have no mead, sir. Andrew, I don't find that any particular polish rusts easier other than like a Smith's polish. If there's coarse structures on it, then they tend to hold moisture and gunk after cutting a little bit. And so it's just a little harder to clean. And as a result, it might rust a little bit more. But with a coat of oil, I don't find that any particular polish rusts or style of polish, sashikomi or kencho or base polishes, it really has more to do with the total finishing. But if it's a mostly mirrored surface, then I don't find that one rusts quicker than the other, if that answers the question. I don't know if I named the other polish right either. Amazon Project Swords. Yeah, there's a bunch of different distributors on Amazon. I have no familiarity with. All right, I'm losing my chat again. Jumping down to the bottom. Sorry if I missed anything. Do you, Mr. J? Do you think there will ever be a graphene-based sword? Honestly, in terms of the metals, I'm the worst person to ask because I generally don't care what they're made out of as long as they do sword things well and are shaped to do. If you're studying traditional swordsmanship, if it's got the shape that allows that, if you want a historical thing, if it's that. But in terms of the specialty metallurgies, and I don't look into it very much. And that's I haven't found that swords that are supposed to be fancy in the price that I can pay, right? It's not to say that very nice swords that when you're willing to pay to get a competent smith that can unleash the potential of whatever steel they're working with. But I don't see that happening in the under $3,000-$4,000 price point, right? If like the L6 blade that I tested from Hanwei many moons ago, rolled over pretty easy, and that wasn't that was unexpected. Wasn't heat treated properly. So I tend to be really leery of any specialty steels, at least with the swords that I tend to talk about on the channel, because they require often specialty heat treatments that forges in China aren't particularly familiar with. And it's not that they can't, but the output tends to be has a lot more variation in it than even the normal stuff they work with. So I don't know if there'll be ceramic swords or swords made out of other stuff, but I've almost completely disregarded what other things swords can be made out of. But if you find one and it's cool, I'd be happy to smash it on stuff in my backyard. Chris, you grind and drink. Do your thing. It'll be funny if you're like, I ground this blade drunk and I ground this blade and it has more wiggle in it. That here's your grinding on drugs, like the egg frying in the pan. The old don't do drugs ad. Weapon Man, any great swords? I have some larger Albion pieces up there, and I have a big messer from Sword Friend Ian that I have yet to fully test. No claymores, but not technically. Not if you're talking about ones that are like 6 feet long. Ronaldo, a few words of Jayco folded laminated versus T10. It depends on what you want. If you want resilience, I'd go with T10. If you're going to whack stuff into it and you want it to hold up, I'd put more faith in the homogeneous T10 than I would the folded laminated piece. If you want something pretty or something with a historical tie, then go folded. Shane. Shane, you heard that you can request that Ryan's sword not be used for swords in Russia. I imagine their service is pretty good. So I'd imagine if you put a request in for what you want, then they're pretty keen to give it to you. Wouldn't surprise me if they can go a different direction. You got the Huawei for just as Yato. It's amazing for the cost. That's good. I'm glad you like it, Chris. I'm glad it came in too. There's a lot of people waiting. All right. Alientude. Kyle, you have a great point there. Huawei is worth the price if you can deal with the service. That's a good way of putting it. I've only had really one to play with, but people tend to sing their praises in terms of quality, but it's real tough to get the weight. Ooh, questions are coming in faster than I thought. It's going to be hard to get through Eric's list here. Thanks, AC. One, would you buy a Gunter Messer from Lands Connect Import? Yes, that is one I would lean toward. I've really enjoyed playing with the Gunter. It's one that I really liked. I did a review on it. My feelings have not changed. I think it's a very fun sword. Flip side, the Gustav is one that I didn't like as much at first, but I've come to kind of like that one a little bit more, and that's the one I'm working on now. Go figure that every Lands Connect Emporium thing that I test is one that I kind of want to buy. I have that problem with swords, as you might imagine, but I'd be torn between the Gunter and the Gustav, but I think I might lean Gustav. Just because it's a little different. It's a little shorter, but I've had a lot of fun playing with it. I've not been very successful cutting, at least not water bottles. I tend to smash them, but I like the shape, and I think that one, it has a fun, imposing, stout little sense to it, and I like the odd shape. Not that it's particularly odd, but all right. Thank you. Huawei communication isn't. Yeah, you can get answers, but Ryan, when you say it's not bad, I think there's enough folks out there that have, I don't know, the expectation and impact, right? I don't know that Huawei does a great job of setting good expectations for people, and there's a lot of companies out there. People are on edge. There's a lot of people that want to steal your money, and I don't expect that Huawei is a company that wants, intends, or is doing that. But when you order something that you think is in stock and then it takes 6 or 8 months to get because of this, that, or the other, or you order a custom project and they say it's this many months and then it takes a year. There's challenges and stuff in the supply chain that might give you some leeway, but I don't think many custom project houses do a good job of just telling people bad news, and a lot of people think they're not going to take it well. But if you advertise, like if Huawei put on their site, you can make a custom order, it will take 2 years. I imagine there's still a lot of people that are willing to wait for the quality, and they probably wouldn't bug them every month. But if you say to somebody it's going to take 3 months, well, after 6 months, they're going to pester you every week, or at least some folks will. So I don't think they're bad. I don't think their intent is bad. But from a business perspective, I don't know that it would be acceptable to. Yeah, I get it. I get why people are frustrated anyway. Chris, I've not had a super chat before. Thank you for the $10. Everyone should use super chats to support this. Thank you. Yes, here's money. Thank you. I will use it to buy mead and drink in your honor, sir. Not right now because there's snow and I don't want to get up. But later, I will buy mead with your $10 and drink. Mm-hmm. Penodic, did LK Chen give feedback on the sword I tested? Yeah, they showed some more things basically about the manufacturer of the next one. They said they were going to go back and take a look at some of the swords and how it broke, and that they were having some pretty serious conversations with the partners they use for manufacturing. What that translates to, though, I don't know. Generally speaking, LK Chen has been pretty good about the swords that they've made. They've, feedback about it. The Tong Dao being too soft was taken well. Feedback about the bronze furniture on the end of things. They've done some things to correct. So I think they've bought some goodwill, and I hope that they resolve that. But yes, they seem to take it pretty seriously. They've not reached out and said, we're going to send you another one. Go smash it on the thing in the backyard. And frankly, I don't know how much they really like that I do smash the swords. That was not necessarily the intent when they sent it to me. And they even asked me not to break the Chujin. They said, please don't break that one. So I still have some others to test, though, and to finish up. So we'll see. But I'm hoping that they'll eventually remedy whatever it is, send another one out so that I can make a follow-up video and show that at least the fear that you might have about buying that one is mitigated by improvements. Yeah, man, what you're making a good point there about the Huawei piece. If you buy in stock, just be cautious, because I've heard some folks say that, oh, the Saya might not be in stock or something like that, and then it takes a while. If you know that you're impatient, then I think that's a great example of some people are totally willing to wait for quality, and it doesn't, it might bother them, but the wait is justified. And other folks know I'm impatient and I want my shit now. And if I give you money, I expect you to hold up your end, and that's also totally fair. I would definitely advise you not to not to purchase any custom swords, because they always seem to take longer than expected. Anyway, either approach is fine, but if you know that you're going to be, I don't even know that it's necessarily impatient sometimes, when I don't think a lot of people do a great job of adhering to deadlines. And I don't mean that like, you said it would be ready at 12 o'clock and it's 12:01 and now you're calling your lawyer. I don't mean that, but I do mean that I've totally been soured on working with some companies and some people, some private craftsmen, that when I've said I want a thing, how long will it take? And then, they say 2-3 months. 2-3 months comes by, 6 months rolls by, a year rolls by. Now we're going into the second year, and they make me feel like an asshole for pestering them. And at the same time, if somebody had said, well, it'll take 2 years, then, well, that would have been the expectation. I would have left you alone. But anyway, there's a balance, is I guess what I'm getting at. I'm diving down a rabbit hole nobody asked a question about. So, Shane, Scotch and bourbon. So I like Scotch. I like Scotch a lot. I like Scotch too much. But I've taken to bourbon a little bit more, because I cut back a little bit on the drinking. And Scotch is maybe a little too sippable. Bourbon has had a nice bite, and I've come to like something that kicks me in the teeth a little bit. So usually what I buy is just stuff from Costco, though. So, but they have a couple tasty things there. There was a Four Roses bourbon not too long ago that was pretty tasty. In stock just means they have the materials. Not sword related, but what's your favorite food? I don't have a not favorite food. I'll tell you that much. I'm pretty adventurous when it comes to food. I like just about everything. I would say I'm simple sometimes. I like pizza and burgers and things like that. But I think what I tend to crave most, or I miss the most from the pandemic, there was a sushi place near my house that did all you can eat sushi, and it was pretty good. It wasn't boutique sushi, and I live in Minnesota, which is pretty far from the ocean or any place that these fish are sourced. So it was not the most pristine sushi, but I find myself missing that, and I eat a lot of that when I can. And so now when I go and get sushi, it's like it's a $200 bill to pay the sushi bill if I want to walk out of there full. So I really like sushi, but there's not a lot of types of foods that I don't like, generally speaking. So that's a non-answer, but I like food. I'm easy to please there. missing questions here. The lull in talking. Well, anyway, sorry if I missed your question. 18-year-old Glenn Levitt rocks. Yes, I've what's I don't know why it's the McDonald. Is that what it is? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank there. I like Glenn Levitt. The 12-year is tasty. The 8, as you progress up, they get pretty tasty. But I'm trying to think if it's a McDonald or something. There was a thing at Costco, a bottle of 15-year McDonald. I keep saying it, so maybe that's it. But I really like that one. It had a little bit more tooth to it, and I've come to really like the blended Scotch from the big 175 that comes from Costco. I think that is really, really excellent, and I've been able to sip on that for many moons. Macallan, yeah, that must be what I'm thinking of, not McDonald's. I don't the McDonald's Scotch, no. What am I talking about? Have you tried pizza with pineapples? I have, and I don't think it's necessarily sacrilegious, but I will eat totally ham and pineapple pizza. I don't think it's bad. It's not my first choice, but if it's there, I'll take it down. It's having lower than a mere polish on a blade make the hamon visible. I think the etch tends to make things more visible than anything else, regardless of how shiny it is. Usually, acid is what makes the hamon most visible in most Chinese made blades, anyway. I don't have any plans, Chris, to review any of the collab pieces between Sonny and Angus. It's not that I wouldn't. They look great, and I know Alien Tooties in the chat. Kyle did a review on one, and he had very kind things to say about it. So they do look very nice. You will see the review on the A trim coming up, Real Swords. I think there's a fun one in store for Monday. We'll see if people like it. And then the Angus trim, I try to rotate them. It's done and it's up for members though, so I have cut with it and I have talked about it. The spoiler alert is that it's fantastic and in all ways wonderful, except for it's got a wheel pommel with some sharp edges that cut my delicate and sensitive hands. All right, I'm going to jump over to Eric's questions. Theoretically, I will get through them. How long has this even stream been going? I've been talking an hour. I've made it through 4 questions. Do you sharpen your own blades? Is question 5 on Eric Hussein's 10 questions for Katana people. The auspice for this ramble time here. I've come to start doing it. I use a 1x30 belt sander with successively more aggressive belts. I usually start with a 600 unless it's a blunt thing, then move to 1,000 grit belt from the 600. Maybe I should have a step between, and then I use a strop with jeweler's rouge on it to finish it off, and I have varying degrees of success in getting them sharp, but it's generally tended to help. So I do tend to sharpen some of them now. In reviews, I've started sharpening swords if I feel they need it, and usually I cut a pool noodle, and if you can kind of pop a pool noodle apart, then it's sharp enough to kind of move on, and if it just bats them around, then I've come to start sharpening them if that's a comfortable thing to do. Sometimes I have, somebody will lend me a sword and they don't want me to sharpen it, or it'll be historic or something like that. I won't always do it, but I've started doing it. Have you tried the coffee grains? No, I haven't. I have not tried. I have not tried that. Shane, if you're talking about Scotch, I have not tried. Are you saying coffee, or is it like is that the distillery? I have not tried it regardless. I stick to mostly Costco. Every now and again, I'll buy a Macallan one, particularly if I spot the 15-year there, because I'm a sucker for that one. And then every now and again, they used to do like a Christmas type of thing. So there was a Speyside 20-year that's been around. and a few other odds and ends. But I do enjoy me some Scotch. That's tasty, and like I said, I'm doing a little bit more on the bourbons now, though. I'm exploring that a little bit more than I have in the past. Pineapple pizza is better. I like the what are we talking about, and then we're sticking with pizza. That's good. Yeah, Chris, make more wheel pommels that feel good in the hands. I played with one of the sword that was your personal one. I like that one. Chris Fields, incidentally, who is in the chat, is Chris of Sterling Armory, and so you can ask him lots of sword related questions yourselves as I'm rambling, because he knows quite a bit about making swords, and is quite good at it. And he made one that was very, very pokey stabby and cutty choppy at the same time. Which, by the way, you should check out Sterling Armory stuff. There's a lot of other YouTube and smithy people in here. It's nice to have. It's nice to have just that. All right. Next question from Mr. Hussein's list of Katana people questions. I'm determined to make it through 10. Do you prefer differentially hardened or through hardened blades to cut with, and why? Personally, I prefer differentially hardened blades if I'm cutting, because most of the things that I'm cutting are tatami mats. And if I think about what do I personally cut for my own enjoyment, it's trying to get better at Toyama, trying to make it through a mat as per the instruction of my teacher, who, if he's seeing this stream, will wonder why I'm not in class, because it's cold and I don't want to drive. But that's what I tend to cut, and for that, I'm not so terrible at it now, so I can usually not bend my differentially hardened blades. They tend to hold an edge a little bit more, and they're prettier to look at. But if I'm doing dumb stuff, then I prefer a through hardened blade. It loses the edge a little quicker, but it's a little more forgiving in the doing of dumb things. So if I'm chopping 2x4s or obscenely hard targets, or if I'm going to experiment on trying to draw and cut at the same time on a hard target, and try to do that with speed, I'm gonna bad angles, and I would prefer a through hardened blade so I don't bend the thing up, because I'm debatably competent at sharpening a sword, but at straightening it, nope, not so much. Did I ever see the Cold Steel Kriegsmesser? Legion, I don't think so. I don't think I've held one of those. I'm going back. I've had a lot of swords, but it's not one that comes to mind. Coffee still is named after the. I will have to take a look, Shane. I don't know that I've seen it, and the only place I leave my house for lately that sells food is Costco, so maybe they have it there. I was actually, oddly enough, thinking about making a separate channel of shit I find at Costco, where I can ramble about random things that I find at Costco and eat, because I like Costco. Do you have a favorite Albion model? Kyle, that's a good one. I'm rather partial to the Mercenary, but I think it's probably for the same maybe sentimental reasons that I'm partial to my Hanwei Bamboo Mat. Not that people would argue it's a bad sword, but I don't know if other people would have the same fascination with it. I've liked a lot of different Albion swords, but I think if there's, out of the ones that I have, the one I'm maybe most loath to part with is the Mercenary, which is odd because it's not particularly great at cutting things. I've thought about putting a better edge on it and maybe revisiting a review. I think it could cut better, but I really like the way it feels in the hand. Matt Hall the channel used to be called Everything Medieval, but I think it's Matt's Great Hall now. Made a scabbard for me, and it's, I don't know, it's really cool, and I had a good time buying it. The way I got the sword was a good value, and I like the guy that I bought it from, and so it gives me good vibes. I like the sword. I have a lot of positive feelings towards it. It was a surprise, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And those kind of weird sentimentally things tend to have a larger balance in why I like a sword than they used to. And as odd as it is, there's been swords that I really like the feel of. But as I mentioned before, I've had swords that were promised to be done in a month or 2 or 3, and then took 2 years, and then I just don't even want to fucking look at them. It drives me absolutely nuts. I just see the irritation and frustration that happened in the project every time I look at it, and no matter how fun it feels in my hand, I just get, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way, so to speak. So it's best to move those on to the next happy home. So yeah, anyway, probably a bit of a divergent thing, but I really like the Mercenary. I've enjoyed it for years. I had 2 of them, and I did sell my second one. I don't like them enough to have 2, but I do really like the one that I have. The shout out, yeah, you're welcome, Chris. Legion, no, I haven't. I know Cold Steel makes a messer. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth on the questions here. So Legion, it's a new offering from Cold Steel. I haven't had any other messers. I do have their Italian longsword behind me, and maybe some other stuff from Cold Steel, but I don't recall any messer that I've handled even. Yeah, Chris, I did hear about Bob Elder Sensei. So side note, if you studied Toyama Ryu, Bob Elder was a force. He was a guy that brought over Toyama Ryu and has been in the sword community for a long time. And he passed away earlier in the week, and or not obviously this week, just started last week, and it's a bummer. It's a bummer that he passed away. I believe he was 70 years old, and so but he was ahead in the Toyama organization, and it's a bummer that he passed away. I didn't actually know Elder Sensei, so I corresponded a few times with him over email, but I never really got to meet him. He was always at events and stuff that I did not go to, but everyone I know has always spoke highly of him. So it is a bummer that he passed away. I don't know if the circumstances have been a brief illness, and anyway, yeah, it's hit a few people pretty hard, Chris. I know. I think Female Sensei knew him pretty well, and people in the Toyama community are certainly mourning his loss, and other communities as well. I know he was a friend to many folks. All right, somber note. Sorry. Any preference, William, with the material of your habaki and seppa, for example? Well, I mean, if you could do shakudo, or I'm rather partial to shibuichi. I know shakudo really can have a nice black tinge to it, but a long time ago, I had a set of fittings from Josiah Boomershine, and he did this kind of grayish green color in shibuichi, and I thought that was really stellar looking. I like the look, the kind of the depth of that color. So if I could, that would be my choice. Shibuichi can be finished in a few different ways, but he got this kind of gray green. It almost reminded me of there's a rock, like a graph. It had the shiny, like a mirror shiny graphite kind of looking. That's not the right rock probably, but anyway, it was very pretty. Otherwise, I'm partial to silver. I just see brass too much, so I'm not terribly keen on it. Copper is better. Silver, I would put above copper and the exotic, like if you do mokume or shakudo. But I tend to like shibuichi, which is a mixture of copper and silver. There's probably a proportion, but that's what I tend to like. Real Swords, welcome. I'm officially a member. You can watch the Angus Trim video then. Congratulations. Thanks for joining. Sorry, I'm behind. I'm going back. Albion Squire line compared to next gen. I haven't had a Squire line sword from them, I think. I don't know if I've even handled one. I know they have one that's really similar to the Mercenary, and the difference is the grip, and it doesn't seem to be that big a difference. So as far as I know, they're the same blades, and the Squire line is worth checking out. What do you think about carbon fiber? Carbon fiber, sucre size, there's something similar. I've seen people use like G10 or other stuff on the ska, and it's just harder to work with, so it's tough to find. But I think undoubtedly it would make something more durable. I haven't really played with it too much though. I've always had it made of wood, and I've just heard that they're a pain in the butt to make. Having a whole saya might be a little heavy though. But yeah, could be done. I don't know that I have an opinion on it though. I'd have to think it through and play with it. I would be cautious though. Adding more weight to the handle can do some funny stuff, but there's probably a way to use maybe more resilient materials than just wood as the core and still preserve the weight. But generally, being denser is part of what makes it more durable. I'd have to think it through. I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't even know if I can think it through well at the moment. I've been asked too many times, what's the best sword? And my brain isn't operating at a high level. Kyle the Mercenary, yeah, I really like it, but again, why I like it may not be at the top of the list. I would say if I think back through visiting Albion and going and handling a lot of the different models, another one that surprised me was the Vigil. I really like that. I think you've reviewed that already. What else kind of stood out? The Oak Shot was another one, the Type 20 that they make. That was also a really, really fun sword, but those two single hand pieces stood out to me. And then I can't remember if it was the Earl or the Regent or the what's the other one? I think it was the Viscount or something like that. I know there was another one with a complex hilt or more elaborate hilt, I should say, and some embellishments that I also really liked. All right. Sorry, I'm missing questions. Is that some bare wall you see back there? Yeah, I could probably mount a knife right here. There we go. There we go. Camera. All right. Maybe you would question. I'm not. Oh, battle ready katana is the real difference between. Battle ready is like a generic term that tends to get used and thrown around and doesn't necessarily mean what you expect it to mean, but generally means it has a tang that goes down the handle and that it's made of a steel that's suitable to take an edge and not crack or break apart, hopefully. For tatami cutting, I wouldn't necessarily. I would say that if it is battle ready, then you should be able to whack a tatami mat with it. All right. Have you reviewed the giant? I have not. It's on the list, Chris. It's on the list. The Giant Lands Connect Emporium, the monster, as it was dubbed by Artem and Adam. I have not. I have not reviewed it yet. It's hard to move around, and it's not particularly sharp. I've whacked some tatami mats with it. It's funny that it bats water bottles around, but can actually move through some tatami just because of the mass. But I need to check with Sword for Ian and make sure he's okay if I sharpen it, because that's, I think, what I want to put a little better edge on it. Maybe not hair popping razor sharp, but John Evans, red pill you on the Albions. Hopefully you get a chance to play with one and see there's a sense of refinement that they have that's very nice. And if they ask money for it, and a lot of people seem happy to pay it, and other people aren't. I don't want to red pill you. I would just say I enjoy it. Eric 117, hello. The Viceroy. There we go. I think that's what it is, because the region has a grip on it that's a little different. Maximilian review. It's there. It's just so far on the backlog. People keep sending me swords to review, and if I have somebody else's personal property, like Sword Friend Ian, who's very graciously lent me swords for the better part of 2 years now, or a company that sends one out to me, then I'm kind of keen on getting those done first. And I own the Maximilian, and there's other reviews that have been made on it, and it's a popular request, but it just keeps going on the back burner. One day I will make a Maximilian review, and then I will probably sell it. Not that I don't like it, but I think I like the what's the other Tyrolean the Braveheart looking one. I tend to like that. It's got a grip that's a little bit too big, but I tend to like that one a little bit more. I sold Low Tide, Mike. That one was sold a while ago. All right, so I think I'm mostly caught up on questions, so I can move on to 7. Hopefully, if I missed your question, throw it up there again, and I'll try to get at it. What is your ideal length of ska and why? That's 7 on Eric Hussein's list, and that is 10.5 inches is what, can't read between the lines there. No way to take that out of context. The generally speaking, it's 10.5 inches is the ska length that I like. Too much shorter, and it starts to feel weird, and I tend to I don't know, doesn't work as well when I cut. I get weird T-Rex arms if it's too much shorter. And longer, it's not bad, but longer, and I tend to, when I draw it, it gets caught in my gi, and it doesn't move as well for me. Not that I can't use something longer. Most of what I practice with actually ends up being longer, but the bamboo mat, the Motohara pieces that I use for practice, those are around 10.5, and that's the length. Doesn't get caught in my sleeves is answer. It's about as long as I want to go, where I can still feel the kashra. Otherwise, I tend not to hold the sword in the proper locations. My hands tend to naturally gravitate to that size. Hopefully that answers question. Yes, real swords. There's a line of people that have been asking me about selling the Maximilian, and I don't know. There's a few Albions up there, and I have I will probably inevitably sell some of them, but it's just I have months of reviews to get through before I get to them. Send me your backlog. It's a lot of shipping. There'd be a lot more bare walls there. Most of the stuff behind me is the backlog, or it's up on eBay. There's only a few that aren't. Next question was, what is your favorite katana geometry? What is your favorite katana blade geometry style, and why? I should have thought through these questions a little bit more. The favorite, I like a simple single bohi, and just a shinogi zakuri blade with a bohi. I think it's very elegant and looking. If you ask me what my favorite is, that's probably it. But it's not that I don't have an appreciation for any other style. Just that's aesthetically, I guess, what my mind goes to. And if I guess it lets me focus on things that aren't the katana and the geometry, maybe why, which is odd. Like, it's like, what's your favorite food? Water. So, but yeah, I don't know. I get less distracted, I suppose, and can focus on some of the other manufacturing qualities or things of the blade. If it's a unique geometry, then then that tends to be the focus, or at least a focus in terms of its quality or its interest. But the shinogi zakuri with a not an okasai, but I don't know. That's a tough question, because there's so much to appreciate in all the different styles. It's not that I dislike any one of them in particular. And the more kind of obscure shapes I tend to like. But I would say my favorite is the cliche kind of stereotypical shinogi zakuri with a nicely carved bohi in it. I don't know where I can buy a secondhand swords in the UK aside from UK is a challenging one, Brandon. I don't have a whole lot of insight for you there. They're going to make a Warwick style blade with a Viceroy looking hilt. That sounds pretty cool. I didn't think the Viceroy was, if I'm thinking about it, that's the one with the, it's It's not quite a scent stopper. It's got some panache to it that's a little different. It's not the one on the Regent. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of the Viceroy correctly, but it looks neat, and I think it was less aggressive on my very sensitive paws. I think the ASDF, the Katanas are technically a hidden tang, if I'm not mistaken. I think the tang usually doesn't go all the way down either, unless there's scale stuck on the side, and it's like a tactical katana. But a lot of people call them full tang, even though I don't. If it were a knife, I don't think that would be considered full tang. I get a little lost on whether or not you would consider it that or not. What's my most expensive sword? I pinged that one earlier. I mentioned it, the Anthony de Cristofano piece. 5 inches. Well, you're going to have a big sword, Chris. Eric, no. Thanks for putting them out. It gave me something to ramble about. I'm glad you're still here, and hopefully I'm answering your questions, doing them justice. Eric Hussein is another YouTube creator, incidentally, the maker of this list, as far as I know. So you can check out his answers on his channel. Sorry, falling behind on stuff again. Which company make the best katana? If you talk about quality, any idea? Oh, brain blare break. It depends on what you mean by quality. As of late, I've really liked Motohara pieces. If you're talking about cutting tatami mats or practicing Japanese swordsmanship, I think they do a really good job. If your definition of quality is being able to beat through as many 2x4s as humanly possible before a specific katana would break, then probably, even though I haven't played with one to do that particular activity, like a 3V blade made by Kevlar or something like that would probably be more to the task. Anyway. All right. I'm going to move on to question 8. I'm making it through. Moving along. What is your favorite katana? Oh, no, I did 8. I get to move to 9. Do you name your swords? Sometimes. As somebody mentioned earlier, low tide. Every now and again, I'll name one. I don't name all of them, but I've come to, especially later with some of the project pieces that I've gone through, there's a name that tends to get made. I feel a little weird about naming projects, particularly ones that I end up selling, but inevitably, me and the man in black, when he's typically the one doing the mounting, they get kind of code names, if you will, and that's what I tend to advertise. But yes, so sometimes, I suppose, is the answer. Low tide was one. It got brought up earlier. Black Beauty was another one that I talked about the other day with somebody. Trying to think, but there's certainly been things that I've named. Not all of them, though, and I would say the minority tend to get a name. AC, do I have any Viking era swords in my collection? Not anymore. I had one. I had the Castle Keep one, but I sold that not too long ago, and I don't think I have any other Viking style pieces around at the moment. Nodachi. I don't know where Zach, I don't know where you can buy a Nodachi. Cold Steel has one. They come up on eBay. No, that's an Agamaki. I don't know. Hanwei, I think used to have an Odachi, or is that an Odachi? You might find one secondhand. I don't know of a good one. You could maybe work with a custom shop to make one too. Eric, no, I don't. Tatami is a challenge as of late. Supposedly they're reusing mats and someplace closed, and it's caused a little bit of a challenge in supply chain. So my advice would be rolled newspaper is the closest analogous substance that you could find. Or if you can go buy old like rags at the Goodwill and roll them up with lawn clippings or something. From Bouguet, it's a Lego? No, I don't know what you mean. Second one, which was Lion Dog. Okay, I remember the Lion Dog from Bouguet. That was a neat sword. Not one that you see come up very often. All right, I'm moving on to question 10. Then I promise I'll stick around for a few minutes to answer more questions. What is the best cut you've ever made and or the one you're most proud of? I guess there's been two that come to mind that were surprising. Earlier I mentioned rolled newspaper, and I used a Hanwei Shinto, I believe, a 25th anniversary edition one, a sword that I really happen to like. Wish I had a better version. The version I had was kind of not in the best condition, so I sold it off, but it was a very nice sword. If you have a chance to buy one of those from Hanwei, it's highly recommended. Very, very light and nimble, fun sword. But I had a 25th anniversary Hanwei Shinto, and I had a big 6-inch diameter rolled set of newspaper that had been drying for like a day. And rolled newspaper, I've talked about it a few times in videos, is a can be a really, it can just be mush, and it can cut through really easily, or it can be like whacking into a tree. And some of the variability of used tatami, oddly, and it has a lot depends on how thick it is and how long you dry it, and if it's soaked all the way to the core, and yada yada yada. But anyway, I had been cutting this material a few times, and it was more akin to the log, the tree trunk, if you will. And I was recording myself, and I think it's in the video review I did of it, but I zipped right through, and it surprised me. And I don't remember if I was cutting over my lead leg or not, but either way, that's a no-no. And it just like struck me as a reminder, like, oh, I might actually cut through it. I expected to stop and not make it through the target, and I made it all the way through, and it shocked me. I was really surprised. Like, I made it through, and then my arm stopped. It's like, wow, okay. That was neat, because I was not expecting. It's like cutting a tree down with a sword in one strike. It just was not something I was expecting to happen. So that was a surprise. The other one was at the Angel Sword booth, and the first Angel Sword that I remember buying, and this is a long time ago, maybe one of my earlier videos. I had this little 25-inch sword, which was it was a katana by their estimation, but it was shorter than I was used to. And I brought it in, and it was the first time I had a very long conversation with Dan Watson at Angel Sword, which, as a side note, talking about people that have passed away, Daniel Watson of Angel Sword passed away not too long ago as well. It's been a rough set of months for the sword community. There's people dropping out. So anyway, if you didn't know that, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but you can put your well wishes on their site. As far as I know, they're still up and going in business. But anyway, it was the first time I had talked to Daniel Watson for any particular length of time, and we were going back and forth, and I was talking to him about some of the less savory aspects of Angel Sword's reputation in the community, and getting his thoughts. And he was very generous with his time and knowledge, and I was not a particularly as well known in the sword community perhaps as I am now, but he went back and forth, and he sharpened the sword for free, and did some stuff, and then he brought out a quadruple roll of tatami, and he cut some with the walkie that I was using, and then let me cut some. And it was just a spur of the moment random thing where I was mildly inebriated at a Renaissance festival, and a big crowd drawed, and it was a very big roll of tatami mat, and I cut it without knocking the thing all over the place, and it was fun. And so I remember that one. I remember that cut. It's after cutting a lot of things, it's tough to remember like specific things that you've cut or specific stuff. But those are, I don't know if I'm particularly, if those are the best or if I'm particularly proud of them. But those are at least two that stand out in my mind when I read the question. All right, I've made it through the list. I've made it through the list. Yeah, I'm gonna pop back over, and sorry again, camera here face here, so you get to see the pretty and then the chins. But I'm going to go back to questions, and I'm going to probably end the stream in the next 10-15 minutes ish. So just a heads up, we're coming up on the end. But I've successfully made it through 10 questions. It only took me an hour and a half. I don't know how my wife puts up with me. I'm this long-winded in person. All right. Kane, you Nodachi from Ryan Sword. It's a good call out. Yeah. I haven't played with Nodachi before on the channel. What's the worst injury I've taken using swords? I've had a lot of near misses that remind me that protective gear and caution is important. The earliest one is a bit of a meme now, but I had a chunk of sword that flew right past my face, and you don't see it in the video, but it like hit my shed, and the tip of the sword stuck in the shed. So I was a few inches from not making YouTube videos anymore, for sure. I've had swords break and fly back at me, but I tend to use more caution now. So I've avoided most of them, but I've certainly cut my hands, particularly in sharpening them or cleaning them. That usually tends to be the most. I've drawn and I've cut my hands doing noto, but that usually tends to be it. The worst one I've had is a cut on my hand where I cut pretty deep, and there's a scar on my hand. As a young guy, as a young guy, I dropped a knife right on the knuckle of my big toe. That was it still hurts when it rains. So I've had some odd cuts, but I've actually been pretty lucky for the most part. The injuries I've taken using swords have been like boken to the head, or at the last I got a naginata butt right to the groin, and Sensei was good. He hit both of them. So anyway, let's see, Eric. I'm glad the cut was memorable for you. There's a couple dumbfounding moments that have happened with swords, but those are the ones that stood out. I have a Hanwei Great Wave Katana from 2004. Any recommendations on making a new? Yang, I use Josiah Boomershine is a good one to reach out to. So bear in mind that if you're having a new parts made, it's probably going to be more expensive to have them made than to buy a new sword, or maybe about the same price. So don't be surprised if it's at least $300-400 to have a new ska made if you want a new core, and I'd certainly recommend you do. So don't be surprised at the cost. But anyway, yeah, Josiah Boomershine. The Mystery Man in Black does not like to be recognized or named in public, but he's a good guy to go to. If you shoot me an email, then I can send you his details privately. There's a few Cottontail Customs. I think I'm not sure if Josh is doing work right now or what his plate looks like, but those are some places where you can have a new grip made and wrapped. Working through questions. Yes, being long-winded. Pros and cons. Good for this if you want to ramble into a camera sitting in a room by yourself. Then being long-winded is not so bad. But in person, I think it could be a bit much. At least that's what people tell me. Pre-pandemic, so the Toyama class is still going for Kenjutsu, and I believe HEMA classes are still going. The Society for Blade Arts, it used to be called Minnesota Sword Club, but now I think it's the Society for Blade Arts, is where I know they do HEMA, and where the Toyama class meets, and it's in Minneapolis. As far as I know, they're still going, so you can reach out and check it out. I've meant to do HEMA sometime, to go in and check it out, but I can't keep up with the sword classes that I'm trying to make, or that I'm committed to already. So it's tough to keep up. but I think they're still going. There was like HEMA events or something that were going into the class that we were doing. So, and I think they do Olympic fencing and some other stuff there. There used to be a kendo school that was in under the same building, but I think they moved locations. But I know I'm not as familiar though, because I don't do the kendo. Scott, best Japanese sword made for less than $400. If you were here earlier in the stream, you would know I can't answer that question. The closest one. More context required for my old long-winded brain. Any plan on trying something like Spadrone, Montante? I don't know how to pronounce the last one. I do have some sabers. They were back there. But I was going to do a review on the Cold Steel 1776 because I have it around and it's fun, but I just have some other stuff to get through. I don't have a Spadrone, or a Spadona, is that what you mean? But a great sword, no, I don't have one, and all the ones that I can see are expensive or not worth testing. But if I get a chance to, I would be happy to. If you want to go cheap, you can use Windex and yeah, be careful spraying Windex on a sword because it can mess up the etch. So if you put Windex on a blade, I'd be cautious about spraying it directly on the sword. Put it on the rag and then wipe, so you affect everything evenly. But Windex has had some effect on the etch and stuff on a few of the swords that I've had. All right. Do you recommend Romance? No. Mackie, the Romance of Men Hajimara one, I think it was $142. So I certainly wouldn't recommend you buy it for $200, given that you can get it for $50 less. But even if you would, I said in that video that the sword, at least the one that I got, and maybe it was off. There's a lot of variation in making them, and I don't mean to make excuses for them or anything, but I hope that the one that I got was just a dud. But the Ito, if everything else was fine, the Ito was just too loose for it to get a thumbs up. I could push it around and move it an inch or more with my thumb without a whole lot of force. And the kasha was glued on, but like it would have come undone, and it just wasn't acceptable. The blade held up well. It was a bit soft, and so if they can kind of get the handle down, then I thought it was a lot more acceptable. There were some good things about the sword, totally, but with the Ito being as loose as it was, it gets a thumbs down from me. Good news, they, I believe, sent another sword my way to test, so I will hopefully have one to check out and verify if it is or is not a common problem. They might send a couple things my way to play with, but as it was, that alone was a deal breaker for me. I would say that and holding it, if you don't play with a lot of katana, that particular sword, it was loose enough where I didn't even want to play with it. Usually I like to use them for a few months, and it was squirrely in my hand. It was loose enough, and then I would kind of white knuckle it, and I would get tired using it. So anyway, long enough answer. I've been watching your videos. One big question is, where should I get? Oh, I lost my dyslexia is kicking in here. Where should I get a sword? You mentioned Jayco Ryan sword, but there's a lot of different places to get it. That's not an easy one for me to answer, Aquawolf. Hopefully the videos give you some idea of where your money is going to go and if it's worth it. Either company has sent me good stuff, and either company has had people that have not been satisfied or have had some blemishes to the reputation. Ryan sword, perhaps in the community side a little bit more, but my experience with most companies that have sent me stuff is that they have sent me swords that were generally of value between Ryan sword, Hanban, Swords of Northshire, and Jayco. I would say that Swords of Northshire stands out as probably the most expensive of the 4 that I just mentioned, but with the best customer service. So if your time is a value and you want to be sure that you get what you're asking for, if you have some custom touches, then and you're the least likely to have to go back and complain, then Swords of Northshire, you pay a little bit more for it, but I think you tend to get that. Cats rules and Katrulzen. I'm messing that up. I have had a few long ska from Bugay. I was not a huge fan. I don't tend to like it. I've had a few of them, and they feel weird to me. And initially, I was actually thinking that long ska, if you study a particular style of swordsmanship that promotes it, then I understand why you would. But I found that some people, like even in Katori, there's people that would practice with really long handles, and they liked it. There wasn't any requirements in Katori on how long your handle should be. Some people really like them. I know in Toyama, some people like long handles. I just generally don't. All right. Your bamboo katana hamon is pretty impressive. A bit of hit or miss on getting a blade with a nice one. How old were you when you started collecting swords? I got my first steel sword when I was 5 years old. I may have had it promptly taken away a few times, but there's photos of me liking swords with like the plastic toys stuffed down my pants and carrying all of them around. So I've collected swords for a very, very long time. Aquawolf, what would you recommend? Artificial leather or silk? I'd recommend silk. Leather seems to not hold up particularly well, and I don't think it's very aesthetically pleasing. It looks kind of cheap to me, but that's my personal choice. If you get leather and it starts loosening, you can lacquer it. It hardens it up, makes it uncomfortable, but that usually tends to hold it together. Leah, have you had any unfortunate experience with bad heat treatment, tempering of a katana, being way too brittle? Yeah. So I've had what was it? The Sheng sword, I believe, or Estini Hunto. It chipped on a water bottle. Not terribly, but that was maybe a little bit brittle. I've had swords that were too bendy and not heat treated at all, and they lost their edge quickly. They've kind of run the gamut in terms of different experiences. I think maybe the most disappointing is the Hanwei Oni katana. Hanwei generally is known as a good manufacturer, and they generally tend to know what they're doing and kind of be I would say they're kind of the standard by which other sword companies tend to be judged, at least out of China. And the L6 piece is like a $1,500 sword, or at least $1,200. It was an expensive piece, and it rolled on my stand on a bad cut, on a stand that didn't damage, that I've whacked many swords into since. And it rolled the edge, and I'd say that was one of the most surprising heat treatment kind of issues. And when I reached out to him, even though I noted I bought it secondhand and I hit my stand, and that's not great, but there was video of what I did, and I think most people would argue that it was not abusive and should not have rolled the edges substantially as it did. And Hanwei didn't do anything. They weren't obligated to, but they didn't make any effort to fix it or do anything. So and they didn't have to. That's not, I would just say it would have been nice. It was an opportunity where if somebody could visually prove, hey, I bought this secondhand, but it's obviously your product. And here's the thing that I did to it before, and here's what happened after. I think it would have been a good chance to say like, hey, our product should have acted that way. But that, that's just me. But yes, it can go either way. And a lot of times it does. That's one of the reasons that I tend to think that most sword manufacturers out of China, 1060, 1095 through hardened blades tend to be, not always, as Samurai Bird may be able to attest to, not always, but they tend to be the most likely to be consistent. All right. Not sure if you've been asked earlier, do you plan to test and review the new DSA? Yes. Yes, it is coming in the very near future. And hopefully I can have some good conversations. I know there's a few other people, and I won't steal anyone's thunder, but there's a few other folks that are also reviewing a similar DSA sword. It's in the corner broken already, and you should see a video on the Baron in the not too distant future. As a side note, I reached out to Yell after, and I asked him about Messers, and he said when they're back in stock sometime in March, hopefully I can get one of their Messers. The Knockenbacher or so, I can't remember, but it looked really cool. I'm hoping that they get in. Will send me one of those because I'd like to play with a Messer, and all of you have maybe seen me swing a longsword around. Something with a single edge and a curve to it tends to look a little better in my hand. So I'm hoping that I get a chance to test like either their Swiss Saber, the Messer, the smaller one, or ideally the Knockenbach, that one. The name, the name, if nothing else, is fun to say. But it's coming. It's coming. For customizations, what is the name? Not Cottontail. Tizando, Customiado. There's Tizando. Cottontail Customs is Josh Marlin. He does great work, and that's his site. But Tizando is a company in Japan that makes Iaido. The other was Josiah Boomershine. He's a guy that he can make swords, he can polish them, he can wrap ito, he can make fittings. He's a jack of all trades, and I've really enjoyed his work. And I'm happy to recommend him at any point. He's been a great guy to work with. So if you can find him on Facebook. He does Japanese sword fixes and restorations, and I speak very highly of him. I think he's great to work with, and anytime I have work to send to him, I'm happy to do it. So what's the most expensive sword? The De Cristofano, Anthony De Cristofano. I did a video on it. The Anthony De Cristofano Katanas. Is it? My advice for first timers is to Eric Hussein here. My advice for first timers is to look for something you like, then make a top 3 list and scour the internet and YouTube for reviews and make up your mind from there. That's solid advice. That's very solid advice, sir. To follow that up for beginners, if we're given general advice, would be to buy the cheapest, shittiest sword that is functional to whack things, like the Musashi $50 sword. Measure it, weigh it, and then figure out what you like. Is it too heavy? Is it too light? How does it hold up? Does it dull too quick? Is it too bendy? Make a list of complaints, and then you'll be in a better position to know what you like and don't like. And that's good tuition to pay, especially when you don't often have places to even play with a sword or hold them or look at them before you buy. So that'll hopefully give you an idea what you don't like. My asparagus analogies. Did I make an asparagus analogy? I remember a long time ago, somebody called me a dumb asparagus when I was a child on the bus. And then the bus driver suspended him from the bus. They were the word police back then. I've certainly been called worse, but anyway, I don't know why that memory kicked in. Normally that would be the kind of thing I would edit out, but the joys of being live. The sharpest blade out of the box, any style. Sharpest blade out of the box. If I at least go sharpest blade out of the box of razor blades from like Home Depot, just the pack of 50, you're buying, you get a lot of sharp stuff in there. I want to say some Skydro pieces have been very, very sharp out of the box. The Huawei piece that I had was really sharp out of the box. Brand new, the Hataya Katetsus were very, very sharp out of the box. One that really surprised me a long, long time ago was a Rick Barrett blade in Smith's polish. So I bought a Bear blade from somebody. It had been shipped all over the country. It had been wrapped in different stuff. And usually that's enough to slightly diminish the edge. But I was doing something. I was holding it for a camera, and I touched the Kisaki, and I started bleeding. And it was it was one of the first stupid sharp things that I had played with was that sword. And I remember I didn't poke myself very hard, but I tapped the Kisaki or something, and all of a sudden I was bleeding all over the place. So that was one that was stupid sharp. All right, I'm gonna wrap things up. I'm gonna wrap things up here. I said I was going to talk for 15 more minutes and then rambled on for 30, but there's questions that come in, so I'm gonna call it here. Well, no, I'm going to answer the questions that are here, but then I'm going to stop. So no sense in asking more. For a sword that is $300, would you say worrying about the metal is not important? I would say it's tough to worry about the metal in general because you never know what you're exactly getting from Chinese forges, and there's not a way to validate. I can only say that if you're looking for resilience and durability, 1060, 1095, and T10 tend to be the steels that have a good balance of those, and 5160 and 6150 that tend to work well in those steels. And I find 1060 to be the most common, that is cost effective and holds up well. And so if you are using those, then, or you're buying one from 1060, I think you're working with what the Smiths are familiar with, and you get good results. When I see specialty steels, I'm always a little leery. I've tested things from supposedly made from D2 and supposedly made from L6 and supposedly, and I don't know if they aren't, but I haven't found them to really be any better. And oftentimes they can be worse, as I mentioned with the L6 blade earlier from Hanwei. All right. Thoughts on T10? I think it's good. I think most of the time it may not be T10. It may just be 1060 or 1095. But I think I've had blades from T10, and they're pretty scratch resistant. They hold an edge well, and they've done things. They're often different. They hardened. I don't know if I've tested a T10 through hardened blade, but what I've had from Hanwei and what I've had from other manufacturers out of China has held up well. But it hasn't held up in a way that I would say is better than 1060. At least I haven't found that to be the case in the bashing that I've done in my backyard. It's been good, but I couldn't necessarily make it stand apart. The Hanwei bird dog. I don't know the Hanwei bird dog. I know the Hanwei lion dog. The lion dog I made a review on, but I don't know if bird dog is a new model. But I did make a review on the Hanwei lion dog some time ago, and it's big. I didn't care for it myself, but it was big. I think I probably would have liked it more if it had a smaller handle, but all right. Hello from France. Hello. Hussein, I have not had an HSTS blade. I had a prototype a long time ago, but I don't think I've had any of their RK or their Budo. I know they came very highly recommended, and they look like very nice swords, but I have very little experience with them. All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap things up. My dad and his bird dog sword. It's a sword cane. Okay. Well, anyway, I said I would stop, and then I didn't. Joys of being long-winded. I'm going to stop here officially. Thanks everyone for joining. It seems like there were lots of questions. Hopefully the ramble time was fun. I might do these in the future if you want to keep hearing me drone on for a long time. I had a good time doing it, though. It's always fun to talk swords. If you have questions, throw them in there. Eric, if you have more Katana question lists, they make for easy topics to start a conversation. So anyway, that's all I got. I'm going to stop here. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.